25 years ago, I went to Kathmandu, and I went by myself, and I was walking through the streets of this sort of medieval Asian Gothic world, and I was feeling quite overwhelmed and uncomfortable and out of place. And I walked along this wall and I saw this tiny little niche, and inside this niche, it was only like a square inch, was a figure of a deity, and I couldn't tell you what deity it was, and that wasn't the important part. The important part was what happened when I looked into that small space, how the whole environment around me disappeared. That's what started me on the quest to look for small things. Before that, the small and the detailed wasn't such a big thing. I was into natural found objects, but really focusing in on the small, and that has gone further and further, where I've become interested in the microscopic world as well, because I think it's something like 98% of life on Earth is, we can't see it. I'm not always attracted to something that's perfect. In fact, I quite like to see time, that time has had an interaction, or weather, or the history, the story of that little fragment of shell or bone or rock, or its history. And also when I find things, I often disassemble them and take them apart and reassemble them. So I don't always want whole objects. I'll just take just a leg of an insect, or just the carapace, or just a wing. It doesn't, in fact, I don't want the whole object, because I want to reinvent it in some way. And it's the sort of the transformational use of materials, so that they go from being attached mentally to, oh, that's a cicada wing, that goes with a cicada, to, oh, that cicada wing indicates flight, and so in repetition they become flight. So it's more archetypal than individual. I'm democratic about what I use. Weeds are fine, natives are fine, anything really that's in my serendipitous travels through the day, whether that's in the city or on the beach or in the bush, wherever you are, there are things that catch your eye, or they catch my eye. And it's good to, it's a way of focusing in on where you are and becoming present too, I think. So I'm always looking for little things. I do consider myself a little bit of a bowerbird, and I suppose instead of things that I find and put in my bower or collect from my bower, they're not really to attract or made as such, but they are to attract people, and they're to attract then ideas about why those materials and what are the connections between those materials. I don't know why I'm attracted to things that are seemingly very fragile, but I think it's probably to do with the fact that they're seemingly more transient, and so they talk about, or they contain death within them in some sense. They're closer to death. You know that they're not going to last very long. So there's a tension there and a sort of excitement, because you want that thing to stay with you, but you also learn about non-attachment, because you have to let that thing go. But also I've found, and this has been a wonderful surprise, that things that are seemingly fragile to us, the structures within nature are incredibly strong, and things that we think are fragile are a lot stronger than we think they are. And this has given me a lot of hope for the future for nature and our planet too, because I can see how strong and resilient nature is in the way that it has formed itself over millennia. And over time it will work out how to integrate our existence here as well. I feel really positive about it. That's what these works are sort of hinting towards. They're a futuristic vision of how the world may express itself. I've loved these kelp holdfasts. They're the bases, and I've had them sitting around in my studio for quite a long time. And I also had a lot of leftover bits and pieces of resin that I'd cast from natural materials, from natural objects, and I was inspired to create these sort of worm-like creatures of the future, which are partly man-made through the plastic entering the environment and partly organic. So they're this organic plastic combination and sort of lolly colours and a bit almost sickly in a way, but kind of that sort of sweet sugary candy. Nature will definitely work it out. I mean, it is the most creative force there is. You can't imagine what nature has created. We can't imagine that for ourselves. It has created the most wondrous things, and I'm sure it will keep on doing so. And I suppose because I've been collecting natural materials for so long out in the environment, I've also noticed a lot more plastic in the environment, on the shoreline, in the bush, wherever I am. And so the idea of how that will integrate into the natural world has become quite a theme in my work recently. The more work I make and the more I'm involved with natural materials and seeing how inventive they are, I feel quite positive about the future of the natural world.